Welcome back to Danny Rants. Today I have a very special guest. I have a DJ, a producer, and a Melbourne underground icon, Mr. Kalus. How are you, my man?
I'm good, how are you?
I'm great, man. Thank you for coming down.
Pleasure.
We've been talking about doing this for a little while, and it's finally the stars have aligned and you're sitting across from me.
Yeah, no, it's good to be here.
So I want to get right into depth, right? So one of the things I want to talk about straight away is how interesting I find this. But when you talk about Melbourne Sound, you are by far easily one of the most iconic artists there was around that during that time period. Myself and the other guys like Orchestrated and the crews that I worked with, we ran parallel to you guys. So you guys were doing the same thing. You had Melbourne Sound on your back. You had these massive fucking audiences, club nights. You had your own scene, your own effectively cult. People used to call Lab 22 a cult and used to run alongside us. But we really didn't have a lot to do with each other in those early days. Even though we were sort of pioneering and heroing the same sounds, there was two completely different scenes from dance to fashion to music running parallel to one another. So there's a lot of stuff that I have no idea about because I was running my own race and you guys were running your own race. Eventually at the end of it, we all come together, right? But I'm so fucking keen to get into this and hear about all the shit that I don't know. So run me back from where you start. Like, how do you start to DJ? Where does Kalus come from? What does it mean?
Yeah. Well,
from the beginning.
Well, I think it was 2001 I finished school and my cousin, he was just DJing, had with mates at home and I sort of I spoke to him once, he's like, oh, this is what I do. And like, went to a nightclub, went to Base Station of all places, on Chapel Street at Zos, which was Jason Midrow and that hard trance sound. I remember walking in with my mates and I just walked in, there's this stage and this intense, just like this vibe in this club, which was it just grabbed me right then and then. I'm like, I want to do that, you know? So I went home, called my cousin, said, what do I need? He goes, go buy yourself Technics 1200s, turntables. So I went and bought Technics. So I started on vinyl, gave me a crate of Hard House records, and then I went and taught myself playing vinyl. So that's how I first started, 2002. And then I think the way I really got into the sound was I was more into sort of like rock, urban, just good quality music when I was at school. And then when it came to being all of a sudden in a nightclub, I think that's sort of how I wanted to eventually translate music into familiar sounds into, I guess it was hard trance for me at the start. So 2003 was the first gig at Billboards, playing hard trance, and just from then it was weird, like the kind of rave scene, hard candy, and all that kind of stuff, which is I feel like where the scene kind of eventually sort of like TFU or that was kind of like the new rave scene eventually. But so basically I was playing hard trance, and then the scene just dived, and then about 2005, I started playing gigs, playing house and stuff, and then, sort of progressed from there. Like, I guess, I'm trying to think back to when the Wawa thing first happened. I think Noel Storbaum, remember, a good friend from who's now living in Sydney, but he was my manager and the guy who I first met in the scene. I was playing Kiss My Grass, and he's like, hey man, I want you to come play at Wawa, you know? So went down to Wawa. There was 10 people there the first night I went down there. There was literally Noel and a couple of his mates dancing just like that, and that was it. And I thought, okay, it's a cool venue. And then it just happened. From there, it just sparked, you know. We just played one gig, and then before you know it, things were just happening, you know.
When you first started playing, you were talking about how you were on vinyls. There was no YouTube. There was none of that shit back then. How the fuck did you learn how to play it?
So I locked myself in my room for literally a few days with these Hard House records, and it just clicked. Like, I spent time and just you know, I literally didn't move for probably 12 hours. But then once that I hit, we spent every week I'd go from One Stop DJ in Paran to Capitol Records in Richmond, out to Upfront Records in Baronia. Like, we'd literally travel and spend every last cent we had on buying vinyls, because back then you had a new song. You didn't have it on MP3, you didn't have it on CD. You had your vinyls, you know. I rocked up my first gig at Wawa with 2 crates of vinyl, walked up the top of the stairs, went by the DJ booth. I'm like, oh, where are the turntables? Like, we don't have any, man. I'm like, what do I do? So I went out of the car, grabbed one of the CDs I had in the car, just like, and went to me and managed to pull something off. But that's literally where it was when I first started. Like 2007, 2008 Wawa, like I rocked up with vinyl singing I could play, you know. But so that's kind of how it, that's where it all started with the. I mean, I still to this day I still play vinyl if I can, you know.
Yeah, no shit. So you still can play it.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely, yeah.
It's not like a bike, I don't reckon. Like I've tried and like I can get it in, but I can't let it stay in. Like it's fucking hard.
Well, the thing is, like guys like Boogs, when he plays, he doesn't. A lot of the guys now will just look at the numbers on the CDJs and they can see that they can mathematically work out. What
0.8 rule.
Exactly right. Yeah. Shh, don't tell anyone. But basically, guys like him, they just by ear, and that's the way you have to be with vinyl. You just really got to. If it's too slow, you speed up with the pitch. And you don't. So it's kind of I think there's a lot more. I know there's a lot more craft back then. There's a lot more appreciation for what you're playing. I think that's it's a lot easier for anyone to just go and download a playlist off the internet and then just go lock it into sync it on the decks and it's a lot easier.
It's a lost art, eh?
Oh, big time, yeah.
In those early days when you're playing hard trance, like you go to base station, you get caught up in it, you're playing hard candy. Were you playing a lot of gigs then? Because this is something that I only heard through like folklore, that you were originally involved in that sort of hard style, hard trance scene. How involved were you back then before you kind of went into the Wawa journey? Well,
I remember playing that first gig at Hard Candy in the side room. It was called Sidetracks. It was run by a guy called Garth who used to have a crew called the Smile Police, and they were literally a rave crew, and they were doing energy parties at Altona and just doing all the like Cryle Castle. That was what I really fell in love with, just everything, because I remember going to this castle, this medieval castle in the middle of nowhere, and just rocking up, and there just being this whole it was just amazing. Cryle Castle was probably the best thing I've ever seen. Like the music, the DJs, everything was really, really meaningful for me. And then so from there, basically, I was playing maybe one gig every month to start off with, just to get my legs, and then I got a residency at 3D nightclub in the city, which is it's called CBD.
Yeah, CBD nightclub was called. Yeah.
And then I was probably playing once a week, maybe twice. Like I never would I have thought that I'd be playing as many gigs as I was later in my career, but so pretty much just one gig a week was massive for anyone I knew. That was the thing. So yeah, that's sort of and after when the trance and hard trance thing died off, I spent 2 or 3 years playing no gigs. So I started managing a record store out in Brony. It was called Tsunami Records, and I basically was just selling records to kids, DJs, whatever. Just kind of fighting myself with musically, because I went from playing hard trance and then also had to have music for the masses. So I'd be ordering breaks, trance, house, whatever it might be, and bring them to the shop to try and cater for these people. And I think that's where I really sort of was able to harness the sounds that worked and what I liked, and I spent a lot of time going through distributors overseas like Astral Music. I remember I found Rixic Unknown. I think everyone knows that one, but finding that as a promo on vinyl that no one had for like easily 12 months before. Bartis and all that had it. Like it was cool having that kind of the ability to find those little gems. But yeah, so for up till 2007, I was only playing on Kiss FM with a guy called Steve Ward.
Oh yeah,
who actually I got to pay a lot of credit. He's one of the guys who I spent a lot of time in the studio and really found myself production wise musically, because he's an amazing talent, And we spent a lot of time just working, and he. Just with all the hours I spent at his place in Lang Warren, it was amazing. So we were doing a full techno thing, doing like a live thing under the name Jalika, and also under the same Lime. We're doing some remixes on Vinyl Pusher, and that was really cool. And that's literally after we'd been doing that for about a year. That's Wawa came along, and then he went techno, and I went to Wawa.
So the Wawa journey, you go into it. On that first gig, what are you playing? Like what kind of music? Obviously you go down to become one of the pioneers of the Melbourne Sound, but when you're first beginning in this venue that becomes such a fucking pillar of that sound and the culture that came with it, what were you playing? Like
electro house, but like Dave Spoon, I remember like Dave Spoon at night, that kind of it was an edgy kind of electro house, and then it started shifting into sort of tech house, like the whole Melbourne, like I still to this day, I don't play the Melbourne Sound. Whatever that transpired from that, I think came from so many different elements and influences, like Tonic, Dioro, when he came in and he started menaging with Joel Fletcher and Will Sparks and Samuel James and all those guys in the studio, and then it's all of a sudden what's his sound called?
There was Dutch House, what I call it?
Yeah, like that Dutch House sound, and then mixed with Melbourne, like the Joel Fletcher kind of minimal kind of sound, it just went off, you know. And that's so I remember.
But they're two different sounds, right? Like you talk about that, like the Joel Tonic when they came in, and we'll go into that in depth because I know you guys were some of the first people to bring him out over here. But that was Melbourne Bounce, and the stuff beforehand was like there was electro, and I talk about this a little bit. I'd love to hear your take on it. But it was effectively originally it was house, then it was electro, then it was sort of like this sort of more underground, dirty, grungy electro, and then people who were making this music that became the Melbourne Sound was effectively a Melbourne version of that dirty electro that turned into its own thing, but it actually wasn't its own genre. Really what it was a Melbourne version of dirty electro.
Yeah, exactly right. I mean, orchestrated, perfect example. Like I remember, so my earliest motivation and influence came from the stuff that those boys were doing at TVU when I was playing at Wawa, just hearing just some of the way they were, the urban, like just the hip hop and R&B stuff they were sort of, but it was a lot more, like just it was so much more amalgamated then. Like it was sort of, I felt like it was worked in a lot nicer. Whereas eventually I think it got a little bit sort of very, very not abrasive, but like it was a bit rough. But I don't know, just thinking back then, I think the orchestrated boys they were by far the first guys I heard doing it. Like I guess, but I guess I don't give myself enough credit. Whereas we're doing stuff as well, but I was just trying to. I'll be at Wawa. I'm like, oh, I just want to come on next week with 2 or 3 new fresh bits of whether it be an edit, remix. I just challenged myself to try and come with 3 new bits of music every week to try and put it and bring in my sets. And that was, I think, doing that was kind of how I crafted it. Was just by picking my favorite rock songs like Fuel Shimmer or like whatever it might be. I just try and challenge it, and I think that's how I was able to get that kind of a sound that works by just having Wawa to be able to go and have it as playground every week, you know.
So that Wawa journey, you go there, there's 10 people, Noel's running it, and then it becomes, again, as I said before, like a pillar of the dance community or culture. When does that start to pick up and blow up? Because that space does not get its credit because that's where TFU started and that's where you guys started. It's really had 2 different lives and both just as influential as one another.
Well, I'm trying to remember the moment when it flipped, and I think after playing there for about maybe 2 or 3 months, and I remember when there was like Jen Tuddy and that really, really early like Ray Chi, like there's a whole lot of really early stuff, and that was all tech house, and I don't know what it was. I think the big thing was a lot of our fans were or followers they're all at school, so they were 15, 16-year-olds at school, and I remember playing Kiss FM one night. I went there sort of after work. There were like 20, 30 kids in the school uniform at the studio, all just like just waiting because like they'd be at school listening to this and they just go, oh, check out this song, and they just, so when you're at school, they're like, you know, core moments where when they find themselves musically. And then I think so we had that whole era, but like for TFU as well, just even people used to call music TFU. Like, TFU music, like, oh, you play TFU. I'm like, yeah, I play TFU, but they're talking about the style of music. It was just so confusing, you know. Like people say, "Oh, you're a TFU DJ," but not as in the club. And I was like, it was just crazy, like to see how. I think that's that whole coming of age for these kids at school and becoming adults going to nightclubs. It was like the perfect timing and transition to go from something they were sharing with their mates for the first time and loving it, and then they finish school and they go. Yeah, that's where else would they go? That's exactly what they want to be, you know? It's
a wild thing, man. I was with a guy who works for Borsch and Boris through Levels Crew the other day, and he's got to be, I don't know, 28. And I was talking to him and he was like, dude, I remember listening to the mixes you guys used to release through Corova on SoundCloud when I was 12 on the bus. And I was like, what the fuck? And at that point, you know, we thought we were fucking taking over the world, but I didn't even realize we'll have an impact to these young kids in this city who were listening to streaming platforms, which no one ever had access to. And they were ripping it off fucking Melbourne Music Forum and stuff like that.
That's it. Like the new generation. Like now I really start to feel old these days when I'm like, I'll go to play gigs sometimes and I haven't been on the new equipment and I'll jump on. I'm like, wait, but how do we do this again? How do you work this one? You know, and just it's amazing the transition from when I was first started. I remember I thought I was quite switched on, but just it's amazing. But you know, it's the same thing. It doesn't change. You know, it's the way that music sort of gets across to people. I just think that now. So these days, who's listening to the music? You know, where are they, and what part of the stage of their life are that? You know, it can be a really big yeah, really, it's a huge impact on what's up the club. As far as I'm concerned, the clubs these days, it's not the vibe's not there like as it used to be. Like the only time I've seen it is at the final event, you know, and same thing at my music bowl. Those moments, I remember those, and people will remember them. Whereas clubs, I don't. Are there any clubs running weekly apart from like levels? And
yeah, there is a couple, but not many. Like like it was back in the day. You know, again at the start of this podcast, I talked about the stories of how you guys are doing thousands and thousands of people in your club world playing your sound with your artists. We're doing the same fucking thing down the road, and we didn't even necessarily know one another how successful one another was because the club culture is so big. And then going into that, right? So you go into that Wawa part, you're moving through your journey. You know, you're starting to build your own audience and crew. You guys did have your own ecosystem. And in that ecosystem, you were the pioneer and you went on to inspire these massive guys, Joel Fletcher, Will Sparks. There's no denying that. Obviously, the boys orchestrated at TFU did the same thing with a bunch of other artists that went on to be massive in the scene. But you definitely were the forefather of that kind of your own sound that kind of then inspired these other guys who really went on to do this Melbourne bounce thing. Was there a point when you were working and doing this and, you know, going to Wawa, trying these new records that you realized how influential you were being to these kids that were coming up?
Well, I think back to at the time. No, I didn't realize the kind of the influence we were having on them. I remember when we used to do a thing at Lab 22 at the studio out at Noble Park where we do, I think it was Tuesday, Wednesday night collaboration night, and I mean that's where I mean Roger, regardless of what people say, like he's pioneering the way he used to get people together, you know, and he's a lot of pride in what he does. So we were at the studio and we'd have Will Sparks, Joel Fletcher, Samuel James, Shameless, every Stevie Mink, even like there was a stage where Roger was employing Stevie Mink to work for us, but he just basically, because I was a bit of a loose unit, he'd come and wake me up in the mornings and go, all right, in the studio, he could make sure the computer was all running. Like he was, like we had all these amazing people around us. And that was, I remember saying to Roger and guys, I go, we need to get these guys, we need to lock them down because like, I mean, I never want to be in control of anyone, but like what we had was so special, like just the talent around us. So we definitely recognized at that moment that like we had something before Sparksy took off, you know, this is when he was coming out and picking me up from my place in Melbourne. He'd come from his mum's place, his BM, when he's like, after meeting me at the nightclub when he was just this cute little kid and he's driving out and he's like, oh, I just wanted to do music. And I'm like, yeah, you'll be right, mate, you'll do it. And he was just lovely, like, you know, just young bloke. And just, it was amazing to see how from that to now, you know, like, I mean, I definitely at the time I remember saying, man, just like, you know, I want to be involved in helping because if you want to get anywhere in life, you got to help people around you. I feel like that's with what I'm doing, music, gardening, my current work, like just put back into the people around you. It feels right, you know what I mean? And just to see, at the time, definitely didn't realize what effect we're having on people, but like it's only now, many years later, where I could step back and go, okay, maybe we did have an effect, you know?
And this is one of these things, like I've interviewed with Orchestrated, and then one of the other ones is like there's so many big guys, you just named a whole bunch of them just then. And then the number one person that I get hit up about is you, because everyone wants to talk about your story and the impact that you had. And I find it so sort of humbling in a sense that yourself and the Orcs boys often are like, we didn't know, you know, we didn't know what, as we were doing it, we were just doing our thing. At Wawa, when you start to get this massive influx of people and it became like really like a cult, at what point did the Lab 22 kind of part join together? And what point did it sort of take it to the next level?
Well, Lab 22 was Noel's originally his business name, which was from 22 Hayington Crescent in Noble Park. That was the address where the studio was. And I think just when we started Wawa, the whole Lab 22 thing was kind of was seen as being the promotional team, you know. And then I think I remember when Wawa, when we got told Wawa was finishing and we were no longer going to be there, and we're like, fuck, what are we going to do now? And that was at that moment we're like, all right, we're going to start this Saturday night, well, you know, a new thing. Like, and that's when I think we went to OMG. My memory's a bit. It's a bit. I can't
remember, was it Escobar first or was it OMG first?
Yeah, it was Escobar first.
Yeah.
I mean, not for very long. So yeah, well, Escobar, where TFU ended up being as well, which is it's such a head fuck when you're trying to think about all the places that TFU was. But that's what makes it so amazing that they were there before everyone else, you know. And then when they came back to Escobar, like.
True, because it was like, so TFU was at Wawa before Wawa, then Lab 22, which was really this, like at the beginning of that Wawa boom, was at OMG, which was TFU beforehand. Yeah. And then you guys were at Esco Bar, which was Lab 22, which then eventually ended up being the last place for TFU.
Exactly right. Yeah, it's just crazy to think that, well, really TFU was the last one standing, really, if you think about it, because, I mean, I can't believe that Wawa, well, that venue is still, I thought it was gone, like from when we we stopped having Wawa there. But yeah, no, it's pretty amazing. I was just thinking about the way TFU ended, like not great, but you know, but you know, I think that's one thing I miss about Melbourne is that club, like the culture where the things were buzzing. If you go in the city now, it's dead.
Yeah,
there's nothing there. You know,
doesn't have that vibe. On that culture piece, right? When it comes to what you guys were doing with Lab 22, especially, you guys had your own fashion, you had your own culture, and it was like you could go out and you could tell where someone went to a nightclub. How do you think, but when it came to that space, you know, you had your fringes, your big fucking long singlets, and then the flick and all that sort of stuff. When did that happen? Or did you even see that happening? And was it something you recognized?
At the time, I had absolutely zero idea of the influence. But so Noel's twin brother, he used to work on the door as head of security. And
Shane, yeah?
No, Shane, that's his cousin. Turbo he's known as, but he used to stand in front and guys would rock up and go, nah. Wrong shoes, go away, get this haircut or change these clothes and we'll let you next one. So these guys would go fully change their wardrobe and they come back and they're like, all right, come in. Yeah, and they're very, very, they'd hold the door and it might be very quiet inside, but they really had a thing about just trying to just craft the right crowd, like how they saw it. But for me, I was just rocking up and just you know, deer in headlights just at first. I didn't even think about it. And then I look back at photos and I'm like, I had a bit of fringe going on too. I didn't even realise it, you know? So yeah, I think just that was definitely down to Noel and how he's, because he always had a crew of people around, like friends, promoters, and like what he did was every week after Wawa, he'd actually send out a text message and go, hey guys, great work this week. This is the numbers. So he'd send out a list of all his promoters, like, you know, he'd give awards every week, you know, and so you had these 15, 20 kids who literally were just, everything in their life was getting people, the right people during the week to come to the club on the weekend. So he had like an army of kids around him who would all have the same vision, you know? So I think that's definitely where having the club and then having his crew around him who they hung out as well, like it was kind of like he was doing a bit of conducting, you know, like he was really controlling, well, not controlling, but like having this intentional influence on people. So it was pretty amazing actually. Like he was like, he was the ringleader, you know. It was good.
Why do you think you became the head of that crew? Because realistically, when you think about that time, those clubs, you are the guy, right? Or do you think it's because you were one of the first ones in that scene before it blew up?
It's hard to say, really. I think just the passion and love that I had always had for music, but at the time it was just the right time. Like when we were doing stuff, like when we had a studio, we had everyone we're all friends, and it was all a big crew of people. And I think when you got young guys who are getting into producing and DJing, like they just want to be around it. We had a studio where we could actually teach kids, and it was sort of just that we created a really good environment around us, like and creative space. And I think that's why a lot of we got a lot of not sort of negative feedback, but people would, without meeting us, would just have like an opinion of us. But really, it wasn't. I never had anything against anyone, but for some reason, people. I think we were also a bit closed off from people, so we'd kind of keep distance from people, so that we keep sort of what we were doing, sort of to ourselves. Like it's.
So it's interesting you bring that up, because when I've spoken to other people about me talking to you this week, we would talk about how we look externally at the Lab 22 crew and you or the whole team and be like, these guys are like a cult. And you talked about how Noel would like rev these guys up. You had these communities. At the studio, you used to have barbecues and stuff, but it definitely was like either you're like, it was sort of a little bit like you're either with you guys or not against you guys, but you know what I mean? Like it was definitely like, you could tell. Like someone walked past you, the way they dressed, the way they acted, the way they danced, you could tell they were part of your crew. And because of that, you know, you established this really great community. But 100% it was like that. Like externally watching in, we're like, who are these guys? What are they doing? Like, and then how are they achieving such fucking great success? Why do you think you had such a cult-like crew back in those days?
Honestly, when I think about it, I didn't even realize at the time that was how we were how we were being viewed, or how we sort of that energy we were putting out there. I really can't think of what exactly put my finger on it. I just think that we were just, I don't know, we were just, just a lot of partying going on, but like, you know, it's, I'm not too sure. It's hard to put my finger on it.
Group of passionate people doing your own thing.
Passionate people, I mean, young, you know, when you got people who go through the cycles and when they've been out in the clubs for 5-10 years, whatever, it kind of gets a little bit sort of mundane, whereas these were all young kids from the suburbs from one particular area as well. I'm not too sure if you guys had and you guys were all sort of Southeast Berwick. It was all the way from. I remember when I first went to Altitude Bar, which was a Thursday night. It was a hard trance night called Elevation, and I remember meeting a couple of guys there, and they're like, "Oh, I'm like, where are you from?" I'm like, Berwick. I'm like, "Where the fuck's Berwick?" I had no idea. I'd never heard of Berwick before, but it was, you know, and then started realizing there's what we used to say, like the centre of Melbourne demographically was actually Ringwood. Like if you look at that, like a circular around where the focus was at the time, that was the centre of Melbourne, like out in the suburbs. So everything from that all the way across to Dandenong, Berwick, all those suburbs and stuff. I feel like that was kind of our, not intentionally, but that was kind of where our people were from. You know, I mean, I grew up in Malvern, you know, I went to school in the city, so that area was never my. I grew up literally. I lived in Malvern until I was 24, like 25, whatever. So all these guys from the suburbs. So I moved down to the studio at Labtour. I say moved down there. I spent most of my time at the studio because I spent a lot of time at that studio. Tell you, I pretty much lived there, you know. It's just I don't know.
And it was weird because back then it was so clicky, right? So it was like you kind of, it's weird. It's hard to explain if you didn't experience it, but it was like you were connected to a promotion crew and then they kind of guided your fashion and the sort of sense of music. And even though it sort of sounded the same, it was a little bit different enough for you to understand. But like you could tell where someone went out by the way they dressed and sort of stuff. And then also where they live, like geographically, there was people who combined. Like a lot of our crew was from the east and then they were from the north. And then you had like the guys like Rockers Hawking and stuff. They had like the west and then you guys down in the southeast. But it was like, they were like almost in a way gangs, and not that people were fighting each other, but they were arguing with one another because they thought what they were doing was the best. And I think that's why, you know, you talk about the rise of that Melbourne bounce and how successful it came, and then the city sort of unified around these guys, these young lads. But beforehand, it was crews all sort of trying to achieve different goals and objectives, but at the core of it, it was just a bunch of fucking passionate people.
I don't know if you realize, but I sat at the studio where we had one side, so it was two roller doors. It was basically like an old. One of them used to be a butcher, and the other one was an office. So imagine two doors. One was a studio, and then the back was joined. So we had Van G eventually had a studio there, but so we had 2 or 3 studio setups, and then next door we had what we called the war room. So that was the office where we had sometimes between 4 and 8 like staff there on computers, like doing all the, you know, social media. We had the booking agency there. That's where Carlo was working. Like, you know, so we had a full team of people. You probably from the outside looking in, it probably wasn't that obvious, but we literally had, like, if you went in there any time of day from 10 a.m. till 8 p.m. at night time, there'd be a crew of guys there working on the computer, doing all the admin stuff and keeping the thing buzzing. So we'd be in the next door working on music and they go, oh, we need radio ads, or we need and that's another thing really broke Wawa and our stuff to the masses was doing Nova ads every week for Wawa. This is Wawa, you know, this week with Kalus. It's all that kind of that really like just sort of a bit cheesy, but the backing music was always our original music. So, you know, put Jump on there, whatever, just hooks and all that kind of stuff. And people would go, oh, I heard your stuff on the radio. It was only for 20 or 30 seconds, but that whole situation really broke us to the more, I guess, wider audience and stuff. But it was literally like a 24-hour hub where we had, you know, effectively 10, 15 staff there when we were really popping off. You know, we had people there, they're always working and always backing up what we were doing musically by being on it. Because back then, it's a bit different now because you can have AI generated whatever, but back then just having like girls and boys sitting there just doing everything on the computer constantly, just posting and just you know, we'd give them access to our Facebook and they'd go and do everything they need to do for us, you know. So yeah, no, definitely that was one of the main driving forces behind it. That was all Roger. Roger's, he's very switched on. He knows how to do things, you know, and it's you know, he'd been doing it for years. But I think the thing I was about this the other day. I think the hardest thing was people because Roger grew up in Dandenong, and he was had to really battle and fight for where he started. I don't know if you know, but he remember a boy band or boy group called CBD back in the 90s. Yeah, Let's Groove, whatever. So
on that, I'm just going to say with Roger. So Roger, his name comes up all the time, but he's probably one of the most prolific Melbourne promoters. He's run everything from fucking Heat to Crown to Lab 22. He's been involved over and over again. Yeah, he's still around to this day. He is one of the most famous promoters there ever was. How did you actually start your relationship? I know Noel worked with him, but how did you begin working with Roger?
So when I first started playing Wawa with Noel, Roger was obviously he was the money. He was the guy who was basically had all the relationships with the venues and stuff, and he was there he's there to find talent. That's what he's always done. He helps people get all the talent together, get a direction, and we'd basically come together and have a vision and go for it. And he was always the one funding everything, and he's honestly he's a big reason how I've come to where I am today. That's because he gave me opportunity. He gave me a studio to work out of. He did a lot, and and I think because of his pride and how much he wanted to hold on to what he created. I think that made sometimes people maybe saw that as being a little bit sort of I don't know. It's hard. I think sometimes people thought negatively of it, but I think he's just that's the thing with people who if you're good at what you do, then you're gonna get shit from people. But he did a lot for. He was the main reason why we all started at Wawa and did all that stuff. So he's the same thing with Lab 22. We were silent partners with a lot of that stuff. So yeah.
You walk through generations of time. A lot of promoters and a lot of massive artists, they look back and their beginning of their careers is with Roger. That studio you talk about, before you guys were in it was a studio too, and then after you guys it was a studio too. That studio, Lab 22 Studios, it was a cultural hub of that scene, especially from where you guys were when you were growing up. Can you run me through how important that was to your culture and community?
Well, yeah, no, look, that studio was, that was really, that was the heartbeat for everything. We'd go there, as I said, during the week, we'd be working there and collaborating, and then we'd go there socially, and I'd be there I'd work 12 hours and I'd fall asleep on the couch and then wake up the next morning and I'd be back there working again. And it's funny, after we left there, they kept running up until about a year ago, and it got burnt down. That's because they had some hip hop guys in there,
drill rap dudes.
Yeah. Those guys. I don't want to say their background and stuff, but they ended up having their lyrics, and they had a beef with another crew, and then the place got burnt down, which is crazy to think about. But that was still going for 10 years after we left there, and that was that was sort of what Roger was doing with it just kept the place alive. So that really meant everything. That place, I've got a lot. I've found myself in that place, musically, and I think so. Whenever people would say, "Oh, so what are you doing? What's coming up?" And everything would be done in that studio. And it's when I stopped going there, that was kind of, it was massive. I had a massive probably 3-4 years when it was a big lull, because the studio actually got robbed when I went to Queensland. My dad got a phone call saying, "Oh, the studio's been robbed," and all my stuff got taken, all my hardware, all my computers, $50,000 to $100,000 worth of stuff were gone. My hard drives, all my session files. So even Jump, I don't even have that anymore. The session, that's why I can't. A lot of the songs that I've done in the past, I want to go and read. I don't have any of the session files. It all got pinched back when, a while ago now. But that was killer,
No shit. And so when you were first originally making that sound in that room, it was slightly different. You had your own sort of, definitely your unique flair to it. What were you, who were you influenced by when you were sort of making those early songs? And Jump, was that your first really, really big hit that kind of made you a proper name in Melbourne?
Well, I think the influence was always from going back to the hard trance kind of elements of when I first started. But I remember so vividly the day when I was sitting with Noel in the studio, and he was sitting there, he was sweeping or doing something, and I was just, I was on Ableton, I had Massive open, which is VST, and I remember just fucking around with the LFOs, and all of a sudden that sound that he looked at me and goes, "Oi, what the fuck's that?" And and I put it, and I'm like, oh wait, and it just when it all came together, it was high fiving, like because it just came out of nowhere, you know. It was probably Phil Kieran was a little bit of a slight influence around the time. You know, if you
I can
like
hear that.
Skyhook and the other ones, was it Wasp or just he's had a particular sound which I guess that was a little bit of influence, but yeah, I know that definitely the hard trance stuff, because if I go back to listen to some of the stuff I used to listen to or used to play, definitely there's elements of that come into.
But that lead, man, that kind of like inspired a generation. You know, when it came to all those guys after you, that lead, you know, they've had their own adaptation of it, but it became that sound. Like that sort of subgenre of Melbourne Sound was that fucking lead that you accidentally made that David Knoll.
Yeah, that's it's a spin out, because if I go back and listen to the music for 5-10 years after that song, like I definitely see how people sort of copy it, mimic it, or whatever. It's not really that that advanced or complex the sound itself, but it's definitely it's a spin out.
Those clubs you were playing at the time, like Lab 22, Wawa, you had Noisy Neighbours and whatnot.
Yeah.
You were sort of in part of that scene, and you were sort of, as I alluded to before, kind of the king of that castle. But then you eventually broke out and started to play everywhere in Melbourne. When did that happen, and what clubs were you playing after that?
I'm trying to think when that. So when we left, when Wawa moved on, I think it was about 2012. I think because eventually I stopped. I moved away from Midnight and that management, and Steve Brown actually ended up managing me for 2 years. And when he had Broma, that was when he was still doing Wawa. So I think, I don't know, when you have someone who really is. So we had Midnight, which was the booking agency when Carla was doing it. I mean, that was great that we were getting sort of gigs everywhere, but it was kind of a bit limiting in the sense of, like, obviously, I mean, it was very rare that Loud would call up and go, hey, we want to book Kalus or something like that, because I don't think it's because of a negative. I think it was
politics.
Politics.
Yeah, 100% it was.
But for us, it was never like that. I was always like, yeah, let's do it. Like, yeah, but for whatever reason, there was just kind of a bit of that buffer.
Well, to be fair, the actual reason was people were connected to promotion crews. So what it was if I was to call up and say, hey, can I book you? People would say, well, no, because they're kind of protecting their IP, and you would become a part of that IP. And then you had other TFUs the same. Like Orchestrated weren't allowed to leave there till probably 2012 also. The difference that we were doing at Loud was we were allowing our guys to go out and play, which kind of, the mix of all three of those crews is what kind of made that take it to the next level. But again, I was still political too. And I was only allowing people to have one or two. So they were never allowed to have the whole crew at one time. But what happened was eventually at that same time that you did it, everyone sort of disbanded from being a part of the IP of the promotional crews. And then they started to become the faces of the sound, and they were playing everywhere, and everyone was putting everyone's artists on.
Do you know, I mean, now, the moment I knew when shit was getting crazy, when it was really having an effect, was when I was playing at Wawa, and Adam's like, he said, oh, yeah, come up to TV when you finish at Wawa. So I'd sneak up there, like I couldn't tell anyone, and I'd sneak up the back stairs, and it'd be absolutely pumping up there, and I'd jump on and play like one or two tracks. And people were just losing their minds, like, what is going on? Like, I'd be at Wawa. I didn't even know I knew about TFU, but I'd never played there. And it was cool being able to walk out of the Wawa, environment and walking into TFU and seeing, like, this, again, as you said, the whole completely different. It was like going to a different state. It was like you've flown to a different country and you've rocked up, and it's just, it was cool. That was probably the moment when I knew things were getting crazy, And
it's weird because you go to these different clubs, and I do the same. You sneak into one club into the other. And then, like, the songs that were anthems, I was like, I've never even fucking heard this song.
Yeah.
And then I'd be in my club and we'd be playing songs that were anthems there that, everyone was singing or banging the walls or stomping the floors. And across the road, they never heard them either. So it's like you're saying that you're talking 50 meters, but they were basically two different worlds.
Yeah, 100%. It was, but I think that was, again, it was pretty special, and that's why I'm so proud and so pumped about the orchestra. Like nothing makes me happier to see like the what's been happening recently, but the last gig they played, because I've seen how there's the different worlds, and to be loved and to be thoroughly like across every single demographic of this industry, like, is it's tough. It's hard to get that. So that's, I think, those boys are definitely. Yeah, I think they're the pinnacle of what we do, It
only took 20 years for us all to come together on the one stage.
I know, bad. No, it's it's crazy. I mean, I thought So it's weird. It's almost like you just did this on purpose. Like it's like, oh yeah, we'll do a last show and then we'll fucking.
I can tell you that it wasn't.
I know it wasn't. Yeah.
Then now I think it's almost the beginning again, right?
100%. Yeah, I love it.
So going back to that, we talk about the club where we're talking about all the bells and the whistles and the front part of it, and we're saying how good it was and the sound and the movement and rah rah. But there's obviously a dark side to what we do. Was there some moments that working in the nightclub world, other than the music stuff? I know you talked about getting robbed and your stuff getting stolen. Was there some other times too that you can remember during that period that were a little bit more seedy or fucking crazy stories?
Well, not so much seedy in a sense, but I remember when I went and played a gig in Adelaide once. This is not in Melbourne, but so I went and played a gig over there, and the guy who was running the night, I won't say who, but when I finished my gig, he goes, let's go to my cousin's place. I'm like, okay, jumped in the cab. So 20 minutes on, we pulled up this place. It was like a fucking fortress. I'm like, what's this place? He goes, I didn't tell him. My cousins they're bikies. So I walked into this fucking clubhouse with just like all blokes, just all chains, just hectic blokes, and there's like three naked chicks behind the bar, just like serving drinks, coke on a plate. And it's like, what the fuck? It's like Sons of Anarchy shit, like that was a spin out moment. I remember being just like, that was a different world. But seeing this, like, I mean, I'm happy and I'm honest, but like back in 2012, I went to rehab. I got things really got sort of too much, and I mean, I'm honest because I prefer people to know, like, it's never easy, you go through some rough times. So that was probably probably the seediest or the shittest part of my career where it was like things got a bit sort of, you got a bit low, but it's sorted out. But yeah, that was the lowest point probably then. But that's going on 13 years ago now. So.
Dude, I actually love that you brought that up because, it's the truth, right? Like everyone dabbled in it. We all played around with drugs. There's no denying that. It's sort of the drugs is actually what powered and made a lot of this stuff special. And, the recovery clubs and everything that we talk about now with such a highlight, like we talk about with such a high seed. There's no denying that drugs were the undertow of what made that stuff creative. But some people did get caught up in it more than just on the weekends and stuff like that. Yeah. So for you to actually say that is super powerful because, we worked in it and fucking heaps of people did. It's nothing no one that did should be ashamed. They've moved through and worked through it, but we were all dabbling, we were all playing in it, and it kind of almost as fucked as it sounds, like the beginning of that and how it was around in the scene, from the good, the bad, and the ugly. Without it, we probably don't get the beautiful part that we're now celebrating today, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, look, that's some of my early memories of doing music was, obviously, doing it when you're high, which is not something that I've got an 11-year-old son now, and I think when I did sound engineering at SAE in the city, so doing that, like you have to go to school, and I couldn't be partying, so I was lucky enough to have that contrast, but I worry about kids these days who are doing it like, and not knowing the way out, or not knowing a pathway out. Because at the time, it was all a bit much. I didn't know how to navigate out of it. So, that's why I think, honestly, it's good to be honest about it because, one day I do hope that like there's something we can do to help other people get through it because, some people go the other way, and so, it's definitely, it's a huge thing when it comes to,
electronic music in general.
Oh, 100%.
And also too, like when you're at the peak, like you were too, it's another thing that people don't talk about is, same as me as a promoter, is people fucking trying to give it to you again. So it's like, it might be so hard for someone who's also buying it, they're working and doing it. But when you're working in our scene at the level we are, people legitimately want to party with you. So it's almost on a fucking silver platter. So you've got to have a certain type of personality to be able to say no or not get involved in it. I'd actually say the odds are against you when you're at the level that we were.
Even if you're trying to actively make it your goal to not be around it, people who have it, they'll seek you out because they don't want you to do better. Sometimes, they're like they feel better about themselves if they're, if they bring people back to. So you do get a lot of that stuff. When I was trying to sort myself out, I'd constantly be getting people say, "Oh yeah, well, come hang out with us." I was like, that made it hard, but eventually you break out of it. You a bit of like a submarine coming up for fair. It's like. It is definitely because all the creative stuff I did in the early years was, probably under the influence. So to try and bring that back to, normal levels was difficult at first, but yeah, here we are.
So you talk about the lows, but obviously there's heaps of highs, right?
Yeah.
What are some of your favorite or best moments in that scene during that peak or even up to today?
Well, I think definitely Good Life is like an underage at my music ball. I remember there was another time when we didn't realise the effect we'd had, because we rocked up to my music bowl and Noel and I walked through and Mickey Knox was playing up on the stage. It was a pretty decent sized stage, and I remember he told me, he goes, dude, I was playing, and then all of a sudden people started fucking losing their shit and cheering, and it was when we walked up on the stage. And I've got still a video of it. Like, there's in the crowd you could see like Short Round. He's in the crowd like with his like little hat with a little like propeller on it and stuff. Just like just really early stages, but these kids were just that was one of the most special moments. Like just the way that crowd reacted to me, like when I was playing, that was pretty cool. It's a lot of good moments. Just that was definitely, and there's video of it as well, which always helps, Yeah, that was. I'm still gonna say I don't think I haven't quite experienced everything I've got to experience with music. I've still got a little bit left in me to. So I wouldn't mind going overseas and touring just one time. Yeah, I've got just music which I've been holding on to for a while, and I've got new stuff which plan is to obviously sign it, release it, and then go and piggyback off that and go and see a bit of the world for just for one summer, or one just while I'm still young enough to do it. Young, I shouldn't say young enough, not too old to do it.
Yeah, that's fucking awesome. So you're still making music relatively regularly.
Yeah, no, look, I'm so at my place, I've slowly but surely built back. So I've been, with every little bit of money I could save, I spend it on the studio. So I've got a lot of equipment that I've been. Yeah, so every day I'm working on something. Like I'm just trying to craft something out because, and I still speak to Sparksy. Like we've been doing some stuff on the lowdown as well. So
serious, that's mad.
Yeah, so I mean, we've got a couple of new tracks which are they're done, but just holding on to for a little bit because he's so fucking busy. Like he was like, oh, we'll just, and I'm watching him. I'm like, how do you go from that? Like I looked at his schedule. It's just ridiculous. But it's so there's definitely stuff in the pipe work. So
the early days you're working in the Lab 22 studios and there's a fucking plethora of talent that come through. Can you tell me about when guys like Will, Joel, Stevie, these guys come in that end up becoming some of the biggest artists in Australia, when they came through, your experience with them?
Yeah, look, I think, to be honest with you, I think regardless of whether or not they came through our channels or whatever, I still think they were going to be who they are today, regardless. But I think it was just nice to know that they came through our channels because, for whatever reason, because if they had positive influence, whatever it might be. It's nice to look back and go, okay, well, we were good at getting the right people around us, but. Well, I think Joel was around, but he knew what was going on from when he was young. Like
he's a strong-minded lad, old Joel.
He is, and he's like, I remember when I first met him, I'm like, who is this arrogant prick, But he wasn't. He was just, he's very confident because he knew when he was 15, 16, he was DJing at parties, and he just, I think he knew he was quite aware of his trajectory,
Also how good he was, because I was signing some of his music when he was 15.
Yeah,
he's straight away, like at 15 years old, he was leagues above everyone at the time.
100%, yeah. And I remember with the guy, Lorenzo, the guy who was from Italy that he was working with, like just that moment when he was 17, whatever. Like I was just like, yeah, this guy's he's proper, but. Yeah, look, even Will, like I remember I met Will at Room nightclub. I remember I was playing, I see this guy standing sort of under, he's looking up like this, just this Carhartt jacket on. I'm like, hey man, he goes, hey man, I jump the back fence coming every week to see you play. I'm like, cool, like yeah. And the next thing you know, he's with Van G doing, and he came to Van G's course, and he didn't want to be taught. He just wanted to sit back and watch. So he'd sit at the back of the room and just watch what everyone was doing, and then it's like he just bided his time, and then we jumped in and do it. He's just like he'd already taught himself how to do everything before even he showed anyone, And then before he was teaching Van G's class, and sort of it was pretty. He's a humble dude. Like back then, even he was sort of just did everything very quietly, But yeah, he's regardless of was with us or not, I think all those guys would have had success.
But I think the thing you're not giving yourself credit for is that these guys, you say, well, they would have had success or whatever, but the reason they made that music is because they're inspired by guys like yourself. And then they wanted to go, the reason they were attracted to those channels is because of the music that you were making. So you can't discredit how influential you've been in that process, regardless if you like to or not, because I know you guys are very humble. Without you guys making that music that they listen to at 14 or 15, they don't end up doing that journey. So I think that you got to give yourself credit for like how important you were to and how pivotal you were for these kids' success.
Yeah, well, I remember when I first met Will, he showed me, he goes, how I got into music was my sister she was going somewhere with his sister and she had some music, some of Orcs music on the radios. He's like, what is this? Yeah, and like just hearing that, like we don't get to see those moments when people find music for the first time, and then when you finally, I don't know, people have a funny way of not telling, not explaining. Like, I feel like I was the last person to know. The people like the music. I'm like, it would be nice if people told me what was going on. But it's a nice feeling to know that had some kind of effect on people. Like, yeah.
Did you have like a favorite club that you played at when you were in those early days?
Wawa was definitely like that upstairs, like that was the top levels. That was like my level. Like I didn't really play downstairs, and so that became sort of every week at the same time. That was pretty cool. Like when you play in a room where people know you and you just know exactly how it's going to work, and just that, so you could really you could kind of, you could really expand, those emotions, like and really feel it. So that was early on. That was probably one of the best ones. I mean, Tramp was Sunday morning that was the pinnacle. Like if you're playing there, that was, there's nowhere else you'd want to be really.
And that was the first one where you talk about how everyone came together, but Tramp was sort of it, right? Like that Sunday morning is run by Nunny & Co.
Yeah.
That would play for all the crews they were aligned with, and then end up there. And you guys are doing versus sets. There's ones of yourself and Heath, and there's fucking Will and Heath, and there's 5 of you behind the back of the decks with Orcs there. It's like that was the sort of the place that brought you guys musically together. Then you were able to expand and sort of do your thing without politics.
Yeah, there wasn't the like Ron Burgundy and the 2 news teams. That's what it felt like sometimes, But 100%, because we're actually allowed to. I remember even going down there on Saturday night and Roger's like, "What are you doing?" I go, "I'm going to Tramp in the morning." He's like, "Oh yeah, maybe I'll come down with you." I go, "No, it's just." He wanted to come see what it was all about, But no, it was Tramp it was like the one meeting place where everyone could just sort of be themselves, Unfortunately, it was on King Street though.
Yeah,
which is not always the best thing for everyone involved. But yeah, it's sad that it's gone now.
Yeah, it's still sitting there.
But it's just sad that that whole the outlet's not there anymore. I remember even when I wasn't, if I hadn't had a big weekend or like of gigs, I'd just be keen to go. Even if I wasn't playing at Tramp, but it was a good energy down there to be. I mean, not to be partying, but just to be down there and amongst all your peers. It was just a good made you feel alive. But now the fact that it's not there anymore, like it's I think it Revolve's the only place which is on a Sunday, like has that kind of
underground dance culture vibe, right?
Yeah,
so it doesn't really
that's
exist
right.
anymore. And like in our era, that recovery scene was it. Like you say, the party didn't really start till post 5 a.m. It was almost, you're right. The party didn't really start till like post 5 a.m. Like we were all sort of working in a sense, and then we'd go down and celebrate afterwards. But there was fucking clubs everywhere.
Yeah, sorry.
Cracking a can.
Yeah.
On reflection of that sound, right, it was really like a decade where it fucking held strong in Melbourne, and we absolutely mauled it and owned the city really. But on reflection of that, what's your sort of thoughts on, I guess, how it all kind of finished up? But second to that, the reflection of just like looking back at it now from kind of an external view of how important, how crazy and how special it was to yourself and everybody else.
I'm trying to remember when it all sort of stopped. Do you remember?
2020 is like their kind of, when their pin kind of popped on it, if that makes sense. So prior to that, even then up to 2020, I was doing like the Debbie Does events, and we were still doing 2,000-3,000 kids and selling out in a day. Yeah. But then in 2021, it sort of shimmered down a little during that COVID break, and then it just never came back out of COVID.
Yeah, that's right. COVID is what really just like extinguished like so much of everything. I thought it was like the end of the world when that sort of came on, because just any kind of energy that was left in any of the venues, any of the crews, just got completely stamped out. But I feel like a long way before 2020, I sort of stopped playing regularly. I can't remember why, but it's weird how it just sort of how
Fizzled
things,
out.
Yeah, fizzled out. Yeah, and I think if our scene was still bubbling along, I'd probably still be keen as to play gigs regularly. But sort of become a father, and you got an 11-year-old boy, which takes up most of my time. But yeah, I don't know. It's weird. It's just weird. Funny how I can't remember like an exact moment when it all sort of stopped. But I think Tramp would have been the last thing I was really going and playing at, just sort of occasionally. But that was also because I didn't want to go play at some of the other things, like I won't say who, but like, you know, the regular things that didn't really interest me to do, because you wanted to be a special, go out and play and be an occasion, you know. And it was an occasion, like the loud events, like the wow, whatever we were doing back then, everything felt like it was a special, you know, a special event. Whereas then once that dedication from people in Melbourne, like the clubbers, once that vanished, it's sort of like, what's the point?
Yeah, and I think also too when the big money came in, you know, so you talk about those early days when we were sort of all bubbling and doing our thing. It was passion led by young kids, and no one was fucking buying mansions. But then it got to a point where people were buying mansions, and I think that after that happened, the heart sort of fell out of it.
Not me.
Yeah, no, neither. But like the heart fell out of it, and then it was like after the heart fell out of it, you know, over time it sort of got less and less authentic, and then it got to a point where it was no longer authentic. It just felt like a room full of people. But in those early days, you know, when people would stomp the floors and bang the walls, yeah, fuck, dude, that was electric. Like, there's no way to explain it. But like you're saying, every weekend was like a special event, and it felt like a special moment, and it felt like we were doing something special that no one understood but the people that were involved in those walls.
That's what I was thinking before. But I think the thing that used to drive me the most was just being a part of, like, you have different crews, you have your loud guys, like, you know, just, and we'd be, it's like I was standing on different corners of an intersection, and we're going, like, it was, but to be involved in the same thing, and everyone, you know, moving forward and like taking those next steps. That's what I used to love the most, was just like pushing people, but without losing your real estate as well. And that when that whole feeling of real estate being taken off you, like all people were trying to, like, play chess, or like try and wipe people out, or just, I'm not saying that happened, but that felt like
It definitely happened.
like it was like assassin kind of, like people were just trying to rather than work together, it sort of became a bit bit volatile. That really upset me. Like, when I say upset me, that really sort of, I almost lose sleep over the whole idea of like of hard work then just diminishing because of people's attitudes and their just bullshit.
It was ego, was what it was. But what's kind of insane, you're talking about that, you're right. It's like, you know, it kind of had to happen because the reason why we were so passionate and driven was because we had enemies, which were one another. Yeah. And, and so that's what built it up. Yeah. But at the same time, it was probably the demise. Yeah. And was because people weren't willing to work with one another because of really nothing in political bullshit. Yeah. I think that's what makes it so special now is that we've all come together. We're doing these shows like the Last Orcs, the City Mind Music Bowl, which is, I can drop right now, but you'll definitely be there and be a part of it. But it's like, because of that now, it kind of feels special again. Yes, it's few and far between, but we're having these moments that feel like we did something and what we did actually had meaning. And it didn't just have meaning to us, the guys sitting here talking about it, has meaning to the whole city. You know, 13,000 people fucking buying tickets in 24 hours. It's not just Orc, you know, it's you two, Stevie Mink, it's Heath Renard, it's all these other dudes that were involved in it. And like what we did mattered. You know, people did care about what we did. And the thing that was so special to us, we know now that it wasn't just special to us, it was special to the whole city.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, that's even I'm pumped, like, to the idea, because now there's less events going on. Like, it's like all the hard work and all of the energy all coming to, like, it's all gone round in a circle back to it is special. I actually I get that feeling and that buzz of, like, of excitement from it. Even though it's not my event, like, just that, knowing that that's what's happening, like, is good to see. Like, I've got a little bit of faith left, you know. After so yeah, I've definitely it's true. Like, after all that bullshit of everyone sort of, like, you know, firing each other now, it's come to. I think it's a good place now. I think I just can't believe you sold out bloody money.
No, there you go, man.
I said to Adam, I go, can you believe it? He goes, nah. He goes, I'm still in shock. I can't believe it.
It's been 3 weeks and I'm still not fully processing it. Dude, we've come to the end of our time. Yeah. First, I want to say thank you so much for sitting down with me, man. But but on top of that, I want to say thank you so much for being such a fucking pillar to the community and the culture that we created. even though I said before we worked along parallel lines, without you guys working on your side and us working on our side, we don't get to where we are now. And I'm just so happy to have peers like yourself that we can now look back on about that special time and reflect and have an hour conversation about it. Without guys like you pushing it forward, being influenced by the hard style stuff and then going into influencing guys like Joel Fletcher and whoever else has been influenced by them, no doubt those guys now have a bunch of guys that are looking back with them without knowing that you were the guy that influenced them. So I just want to say, man, thank you so much for being a part of something that's been so special in my life and just being such a fucking absolute pillar and trailblazer of a music scene that we got to both live in this city.
Thank you. No, look, it's a bit of a spin out be here and to hear those words coming at me, some sort of like doesn't not that it doesn't feel right, but no, I really appreciate getting some recognition and just still talking about the music we love and moving on forward and like